At the heart of a buzzing terminal, the low hum of activity barely disrupted the organized chaos of one of the busiest airports in the world. This story highlights the struggles of racial profiling and the strength needed to keep cool under pressure. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more personal stories and life lessons. Passengers shuffled through security, baggage clinked against the conveyor belts, and the sound of boarding announcements echoed overhead. In the midst of it all, a woman moved with purpose, her brown leather satchel hanging loosely at her side, her eyes scanning the crowds ahead. Her name was Clara Knight, and though she appeared like any other traveler, her mind was far from the mundane. Clara was no ordinary passenger. Beneath her unassuming attire of jeans and a black jacket, she was on a mission, one that had the potential to shake the very foundations of a criminal empire operating right under the noses of the public. As she walked through Terminal 3 of Logan International Airport in Boston, Clara wasn't thinking about her flight, but about the briefcase containing sensitive information she was about to acquire. A whistleblower, a man who had vital intel about a criminal network tied to several corrupt officials and local law enforcement, had set up a meet. The job was simple: get the intel, report back, and dismantle the criminal group from the inside out. She had been tracking the group for months, uncovering a trail that led to weapons smuggling, corruption in law enforcement, and a dangerous underground network with international ties. Clara's job was to meet her contact, a man who had the flash drive that contained everything she needed. But there was more to the job than just collecting information. There was the risk of being caught in the web of corruption, a chance that she wouldn't just be compromised, but might lose her life if she wasn't careful. The terminal was filled with the usual rush of travelers, families huddling near their gates, business people typing furiously on their laptops, and passengers scrambling to make their connections. Clara, however, moved with a quiet, unhurried focus, her mind working through the details of the briefing she had received that morning. She had been briefed on the contact's appearance and the location of their meeting near the bookstore in the terminal. As Clara moved closer to the bookstore, she couldn't help but notice a police officer standing off to the side, scanning the crowd. He was tall, in his late 40s, wearing a uniform that clearly marked him as a part of the airport security force. His name tag read Officer Bishop. His gaze lingered a moment longer than necessary as Clara passed by, and for the first time that morning, she felt the unsettling sensation of being watched. Though she was a seasoned agent, having served in various high-risk assignments over the years, Clara had experienced this before, the feeling of being profiled, judged, and singled out simply because of her appearance. She had faced it growing up in the tougher neighborhoods of Philadelphia, where her success was often questioned because of her race. But she had always risen above, refusing to be defined by others' limited perceptions of her. Clara's pulse quickened slightly as Officer Bishop's eyes followed her, the intensity of his gaze suggesting he had already judged her. Was he just being vigilant? Or was he making assumptions based on how she looked? She had learned the hard way that some people, especially those in power, tended to assume the worst when it came to people of color. Her instincts screamed at her to stay calm, to keep her composure, and not give him any reason to escalate the situation. She needed to focus on the mission, not on any potential confrontation with an overzealous cop. She continued walking, pretending to browse the departure boards as Officer Bishop slowly made his way toward her. She gripped her bag tightly, the weight of her mission pressing down on her chest. If he stopped her now, it could blow her cover. She had her federal credentials with her, but revealing them would mean exposing herself and the operation before it even got started. Clara's training kicked in. She knew how to handle situations like this, how to maintain control when all she wanted to do was lash out. As the officer drew closer, she forced herself to remain composed, a polite smile on her face. He had no idea who she really was, but she could already sense that he wasn't just reacting to her presence. There was something more at play here. A distrust, perhaps even a deep-seated prejudice that would be hard to navigate. Officer Bishop stopped in front of her, his expression stern and unyielding. "Ma'am, "Can I see your identification?" Clara blinked, keeping her tone even and polite. "Of course, officer. May I ask why you need to see it?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Just a routine check, ma'am. Standard procedure. We've had some reports of suspicious individuals in this area." Clara didn't flinch, keeping her cool. She reached into her wallet and pulled out her driver's license, handing it over. She refused to let any hint of irritation show, even though she could feel his gaze lingering on her for a little too long. The officer didn't seem to care for her response, his attitude suggesting that he had already made up his mind about her. She kept her voice calm, asking, "Is there something specific you're looking for, officer?" Bishop glanced at her license and then at her, clearly dissatisfied with the lack of anything unusual. "You're from Philadelphia. What brings you to Boston?" Clara smiled slightly, giving the answer she had rehearsed. "Visiting friends. I'm on my way to Los Angeles later today." He narrowed his eyes. "Traveling alone?" "Yes," Clara said, trying to keep the conversation neutral. He muttered, scrutinizing her further. "Stay where I can see you." With that, Officer Bishop handed her back the license. Clara thanked him politely, her mind already racing toward her next move. She had to get to her meeting and retrieve the flash drive, and she couldn't risk being detained any longer. She walked away from the officer, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected a confrontation so early in the mission, but she had learned to deal with these kinds of obstacles. After all, she was no stranger to adversity. Clara had worked her way up from humble beginnings, fighting against systemic bias every step of the way. It had only made her stronger, more determined to push forward. She headed toward the bookstore, where her contact was waiting, a man named Jonathan who was rumored to have critical evidence of the network's operations. Clara quickly spotted him, a man in his early 50s with graying hair, standing near the shelves. She approached him nonchalantly, pretending to browse through the books as he discreetly handed her a small USB drive. As she slipped the drive into her pocket, she felt Officer Bishop's eyes on her once again. He was still watching, still waiting for an opportunity to challenge her. She couldn't afford to let him derail her mission now. She made her way to the gate, heart still racing but her steps steady. The situation could have escalated at any moment, but she had kept her composure. She had the evidence she needed, and she wasn't about to let anyone, including Officer Bishop, take it from her. As Clara settled into her seat on the plane and the engines roared to life, she allowed herself a brief moment of relief. She had survived the confrontation. Now, it was time to deliver the intel to her team back in Washington. The investigation was far from over. The true scale of the corruption was still unfolding, and there were more players to uncover. But Clara knew one thing for certain. Justice had to be served. And with this evidence, they were one step closer to making it happen. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.